Full disclosure, Godric Cloaked Reveler is my favorite card in the wilds of Eldraine. I really didn't think I had a thing for dragons, but after brewing and crewing Magda Brazen Outlaw and now this fine gentleman has entered the fold, I'm looking a little bit like Donkey over here. While the creature type is human noble, his true form as a dragon is revealed when celebrating with the incredibly hype 1-mana fire breathing ability that extends to all of the dragons you control. It feels fairly straightforward to throw all the red dragons into a pile and start torching all your enemies from above. But Godric, he's all mine. No other dragons allowed. And that is the challenge. To build this commander flying solo and to keep it all under $100. Let's monkey around. This deck is built around being aggressive, going wide, and triggering the celebration mechanic before you deal damage on every one of your turns, so you can threaten lethal through commander damage. Celebration triggers whenever 2 non-land permanents enter the battlefield, and this deck has a bounty of ways to make that happen. For instance, the first creature I'll feature is the 2 and a red 2/2 Legion War Boss that creates an attacking red goblin creature token at the beginning of combat on your turn. First turn you play this creature, you've got a celebration trigger with just the one spell. And even better, so long as the Legion War Boss remains on the battlefield, you've got a guaranteed permanent entering the battlefield before you deal damage every turn, which is huge when you only need 2 to make Godric go sicko mode. Take a second right now to subscribe to the channel so you can get fresh commander content coming your way every week. There are 11 other cards in the deck list that have the ability to create permanents each turn while they are on the battlefield. The 2 and a red artifact, Urabrask's Forge, which is a nice piece in a few different strategies, namely Sacrifice, ETB combat damage matters, and now celebration decks. The artifact creates an ever-growing Phyrexian horror creature token with haste and trample at the beginning of combat on your turn while it's on the battlefield. That token, if not dead through combat, sacrifices itself at the beginning of the next end step. Daring Piracy is a 2 and a red enchantment with a similar play pattern, and unsurprisingly finds itself in similar deck archetypes, with the addition of pirate tribal decks. At the beginning of combat, you create a 1/1 red pirate creature token with haste and menace that gets exiled at the beginning of the next end step. Descent into Avernus is 2 and a red, triggers celebration all on its own, and puts a timer on the game. Frankly, it's one of the more fun commander spells. I love playing it, and it works perfectly with Godric. That's because at the beginning of your upkeep, you put 2 descent counters onto the enchantment, and then each player creates treasure tokens and takes damage equal to the total number of descent counters. The treasure tokens will trigger celebration. The damage will help burn your opponents down, and as a bonus, there are a handful of creatures in the deck that can put those treasures to good use. Court of Embereth is a 2 and 2 red enchantment, and is the last spell that can unconditionally create permanents while it's on the battlefield. You become the monarch on ETB, create a 3/1 red knight creature token during your upkeep, and then deal damage to each opponent equal to the amount of creatures you control. The last one is only if you maintained the monarchy through the rotation. Loyal Apprentice, Squee, Dubious Monarch, Rose Room Treasurer, and Guild Artisan also can create permanents so long as they are on the battlefield, but have at least one condition each: needing to control your commander, needing to attack with Squee, having a creature enter the battlefield, and needing your commander to attack the opponent with the highest life total, respectively. I want to specifically call out the Guild Artisan interaction here, because you can have Godric attack as his 3/3 human form, creating those 2 treasures. That will transform him before blockers can be declared, giving him that evasion and giving you 2 more mana to buff him up through his activatable fire breathing ability, if you so choose. Jaxus the Troublemaker can tap for 1 red and a discarded card to create a token copy of another target creature you control, and gives the token the Blitz ability, granting it haste and you a card when it dies. which will be that same turn, as it must sacrifice itself at the beginning of the next end step. For only 1 mana and letting you dig through your deck, you don't even need to copy particularly strong targets. That said, there are plenty of good options to choose from, like Legion Warboss again. That interaction would trigger Celebration all on its own, and who knows, maybe that attacking goblin will live to see the next turn. Carekeep and Mines of Moria are 2 lands that can conditionally create permanence every turn. Carekeep only needs to tap for 1 and a red to create a 0/1 kobold, while the mines require both tapping for 3 and a red and 3 exiled cards from your graveyard to create 2 treasure tokens. It may be in your interest to only utilize the Mines of Moria ability as a last case scenario, as there is some spice coming down the pipeline in this video that would like as many cards in the graveyard as possible. I wanted to take the time to highlight these spells specifically because having that constant flow of permanence entering the battlefield to perhaps even passively trigger Celebration opens up the win condition of commander damage. 3 or 4 damage a pop will chip away at people, sure, but if your opponents aren't careful, their game could be over in a blink of an eye. Follow me down the mining hole. If Descent into Avernus is on its 2nd upkeep, you are getting 4 treasure tokens, triggering Celebration. Say you played it on turn 5, kept the 2 treasure tokens around from the last upkeep, and hit all your land drops for a total of 7. You now have access to 13 mana that can all be dumped into your now 4/4 flying commander, reaching a total power of 17. If you hit the same opponent with Godric's base dragon form in 1 of the 6 previous turns, their game is over. This can be a little bit sneaky at first for 2 reasons. The first is when you read the spell, you're probably going to be looking out for the dragon companions to come down, and then start to sweat as they are objectively massive aerial threats that can all be buffed with Godric's ability. So if he's sitting out there without any of his scaly friends, it just doesn't feel as threatening. At least that's my intuition. The second reason is that the deck is built to go wide, with a bunch of small creatures being created with spells like Empty the Warrens and Tempt with Vengeance, triggering enchantments like Impact Tremors on ETB and Cavalcade of Calamity on attack. Utilizing damage bonuses from Torbran, Thane of Redfell, and Mechanized Warfare, upping those pings from damage your opponents can brush off to damage they need to start worrying about, and quickly. Start throwing your creatures at them with Goblin Bombardment, and it may be time for everyone to congratulate you on your win and shuffle back up. We've gone over some premium cards that provide permanence each turn, and now outlined the 2 main win conditions of commander damage and doing things with a wide board state. So let's take a look at a few spells from the other key elements of the build. Triggering Celebration with a single spell, card advantage, ramp, and removal. To take a look at the full deck list, the Moxfield link is in the description. Charming Scoundrel is a new creature from Wilds of Eldraine. For 1 and a red, you get a 1/1 hasted human rogue that on ETB can loot, create a treasure token, or create a wicked roll token attached to a target creature. Captain Lannery Storm is a hasted 2/2 human pirate that creates a treasure token on ETB for 2 and a red. She also has the passive ability to gain 1 power whenever a treasure token is sacrificed. So if Godric the dragon starts gobbling up treasure tokens to gain power, this pirate captain will be on the seas, ready to rampage as well. Plundering Barbarian is a 2 and a red dwarf barbarian that can either smash the chest, destroying a target artifact, or pry it open, creating a treasure token when entering the battlefield. The option is huge because as much as triggering Celebration is important, being able to remove an artifact like Norn's Annex that essentially removes your ability to swing wide, or Aetherflux Reservoir that can win a player the game, is vital in any game of Commander. Big Score and Unexpected Windfall are the 2 instants that can cause Celebration on their own by creating 2 treasure tokens. These also function as card advantage, making you discard a card as part of the casting cost in order to draw 2 more. Idol of Oblivion makes this part of the list because it can be cast and sacrificed immediately to have 2 permanents enter the battlefield, but really isn't intended to do so. This deck makes so many tokens. If this is on the battlefield, it's close to a guaranteed drawn card every turn, and that is a beautiful thing. Skull Clamp is a 1 mana equipment granting a creature +1/-1, but it's mainly a draw engine, and in this deck that creates 1/1 creatures out the wazoo can go off when you need it to. Outpost Siege is a 3 and a red enchantment that needs you to select 1 of 2 abilities when entering the battlefield. The first one, Cons, lets you exile the top card of your library during your upkeep and play it that turn. The second one, Dragons, is cheating. No dragons allowed, but if you want to select it anyway, you'll deal 1 damage to any target when a creature you control leaves the battlefield. Underworld Breach, which is a spicy one, granting all the non-land cards in your graveyard escape for the turn, as the enchantment is sacrificed at the beginning of the next end step. The escape cost is equal to its mana value, and 3 cards from your graveyard being exiled. This enchantment is the most expensive card in the list, and for good reason, as it lets you recast all the best spells in your graveyard. In the late game, something like Brass's Bounty into Impact Tremors, Mechanized Warfare, Cavalcade of Calamity, Goblin Bombardment, into just the 1 red Song of Totentons, into Empty the Warrens, is not out of the question and would likely end the game. That, of course, would need plenty of things to go right, but even just getting something back like Daring Piracy and Skull Clamp would set you up to trigger Celebration more easily and give you a body to destroy with the Skull Clamp for 2 drawn cards every turn moving forward. There are 2 tutors in the deck, Gamble and Reckless Handling. Gamble lets you find any card in your library to put in your hand. Then you need to discard a card at random. Fingers crossed it isn't the one you were looking for. Reckless Handling also forces you to discard after you find the card you need, but in this case is restricted to artifacts. The upside is that if you happen to discard what you wanted, each opponent will get dealt 2 points of damage. Part of the ramp package in this deck is all the treasure you'll be making to ensure you are hitting the celebration triggers, but there are a few more pieces in there. Arcane Signet, Fire Diamond, Mind Stone, and Commander Sphere are the rocks, and Battle Hymn is an instant that can set you up for a massive turn, giving you 1 red mana for every creature you control. There are a couple of sweepers here with Vandal Blast to take out a priority target artifact or all opponent artifacts when it's overloaded for 1 red and 4 and a red, respectively. The other is Chain Reaction, dealing X damage equal to the number of creatures on the battlefield. It's cheaper than Blasphemous Act and could end up dealing more damage as well. There is one last minor theme in the deck that is mostly there to help close out games, which is stealing everyone's stuff. The 4 and 2 red sorcery Mob Rule lets you choose one option between gaining control until the end of the turn of all creatures with a mana value 4 or greater, or 3 or less, untapping them and granting them haste. With the right board state, the game will be over. Same goes for the more conclusive Insurrection, gaining control of all creatures until the end of the turn, untapping them and giving them haste for 5 and 3 red. The last is the weakest of the bunch, but also a creature, Molten Primordial, which is a 5 and 2 red 6/4 avatar that lets you choose a target creature from each opponent to gain control of, to untap, and to grant haste until the end of the turn. I need to mention that these are good for one other reason, which is Goblin Bombardment, which in theory would let you gain control of all the creatures the card allows you to gain control of, swing in for damage, and then sacrifice them for more damage, and put them in their respective graveyards. Life of the Party is the flavor pick, but is actually helpful in this deck. It is a 3 and a red 0/1 elemental with First Strike, Trample, and Haste. When it attacks, it gains X power, where X is the number of creatures you control. Each opponent also gets a copy of the creature, which is a very unique interaction. The difference is that each of those creatures are goated for the rest of the game. And with First Strike and Trample, your opponents could end up doing a lot of the work for you through this creature. That wraps up the deck. Spam out creatures to join the celebration and profit. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let me know what you think this deck needs to make it better. Catch you later for more monkeying around.